Hi, folks. Good afternoon. My name is Ruben Lobo. I'm going to be co-presenting with Andrea Arioli, who's at the back of the room here. So we are from the Industrial IoT business unit at Cisco. And what I'm going to cover for the next 30 minutes is give you a little bit of a preview of what we launched and talk about some of the new use cases we're releasing through these new products that we launched. So most of you know us as a networking company, a security company, and you're very familiar with what we do in the campus and branch and in the data center and with service providers. But within the industrial business unit, what we cover is connectivity outside of your carpeted space, essentially, right outside of the office. And what this kind of chart is showing you here is ruggedization in increased amount of complexity as it goes through maybe just connecting like a camera outside of a building down to like manufacturing factories, down to utilities, all the way to very rugged environments like mines and refineries and so on and so forth. And so what we focus on as part of this business unit really is to bring a consistent network architecture all the way from the enterprise down into like the physical world where we're enabling automation. That's what the focus is on. And we take the technology that we've built within iOS XE, ICE, Catalyst Center, all of those technologies, we bring it out into connecting the real world. So with that kind of context of what we do, just wanted to set what we've been seeing over the years. Now, we've been in this space roughly for 2 decades now, right? And we started with one switch down to like an entire portfolio that we offer, both in industrial switching, industrial routing, industrial wireless, and industrial security. So we kind of cover the gamut. And over the years, we've grown to become the largest vendor in the space. We've got the highest market share. And the big reason for that is that we're seeing an increased participation of IT in operational environments. And these days, covering OT has become like a priority for IT. And it's mainly driven by 2 factors. One is cybersecurity and AI readiness. That's the new trend that we're seeing, and I really want to talk about like how we're enabling these use cases with the new portfolios that we've launched. And the key thing to make this possible is what we like to refer as IT-OT collaboration. I know in the industry the term is IT-OT convergence, but the reality is that IT networks and OT networks are never going to converge. They're different lines of businesses, they serve different use cases, but it's really important that these 2 teams collaborate in order to kind of like digitize these environments. And we've seen success with customers who have managed to like bridge this gap between the 2 organizations. So 2 more slides, and I'll get straight into like the launch material and get into the technical stuff. So to set the context, last year we did a survey of our customers, and we had around 1,000 responses. We asked them about various things, their top care abouts, their top challenges, what are the trends in the industry. And around 48% said that they expect AI to cause like the biggest shift and the biggest impact in the environments. Now, to be clear, AI in these industrial environments has been around for many years, right? They've always done machine learning. They've always done like neural networks and applied those technologies. Really, what they're talking about here, when they say biggest impact, is the use of generative AI in these environments, which is kind of like new for them. So, with that context, what are the use cases that we're seeing among our customers? So, I've listed a few here, all the way from machine vision to autonomous vehicles down to robotics and edge to cloud. And the key point I wanted to drive here is that every one of these use cases has an implication in the network. If you look at the adoption of AI in industries, machine vision by far is the leading use case that you see across the board. Doesn't matter which industrial vertical you're looking at, vision systems are at the leading edge of the adoption of AI. And they are causing an increase in the amount of PoE ports that are being consumed. They're driving up the bandwidth on these networks. We've gone from customers, mainly asking for fast Ethernet ports, which most of the time a drive or an I/O device or a PLC generally has, 100 meg, down to a rapid evolution to PoE and 1 gig ports, because they need to power these vision systems. And that's also driving bandwidth in the network. So now we have got this request for for 10 gig on the uplinks. We've got a lot of autonomous vehicles being adopted in factories, in food and beverage, in data centers, as an example, where you need ultra reliable wireless for these AGVs and AMRs to move, where Wi-Fi doesn't cut it, right? And then you've got this move to virtual PLCs. Across the industry, it's known as software-defined automation, where control is getting detached from a physical device, which is a PLC, and getting virtualized on general purpose compute. And there's implications of what the network has to do in order to support this, this kind of use case. And then talking about AI robotics, we see the same thing happening. You've got robot controllers that typically is a big kind of CPU kind of device, a PC, let's say, sitting right next to the robot. And it's very constrained in what it can do. And what we see, the trend in the industry and what customers are doing is to take that robot controller, virtualize it, put it in the data center where there is a lot of CPU and GPU available so that they can program that robot to do complex tasks. And finally, on the edge to cloud use case, I'm showing an example of a traffic intersection here where you have cameras detecting pedestrians going across the crosswalk, let's say, or an accident on the road, inferencing happening on the edge, and then communicating with an orchestration system that sits in the cloud that is orchestrating the traffic or changing the traffic pattern across all the traffic intersections that you have, right? So these are like some of the leading use cases that we see. And in that particular case, you need assurance between the edge up to the cloud through owned and unknown networks, as an example, right? So that's just to set up what we're seeing here. So what we believe that will happen in the future, not tomorrow, not maybe in a couple of years, we can't tell you if it's like a few years, 5 years down the line, let's say, is that we expect the brains, which is the control, the PLCs, the robot controllers, to slowly get decoupled away from physical devices, right, and move up to the data center. So you're still going to have your I/O, your drives, your robots on the factory floor, but eventually and this trend is already starting, you start to see this control getting centralized in the data center where you can train the software with models and do inferencing at the edge. And to make all of this possible, the network is key. Without the network, you'll never be able to realize this use case, right? So that's where we see this industry going. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but there's clear signs that this is what's going to happen. And within Cisco and within industrial networking, we're very, very confident that this is the trend. So with that, let's just dive into what we're launching here. So we've got 3 big announcements that we're making at Cisco Live. The first one is a brand new portfolio of industrial switches that are going to enable a lot of the use cases that I just spoke about. And I'll dive into details and explain how exactly we enable those use cases. We are redefining wireless support for the industrial use cases. We are bringing Wi-Fi and our ultra-reliable technology closer together in one single access point using one management system, and Andrea is going to cover that. And then last but not the least is when it comes to security, this is an example where we are using native AI in our products to make the lives of our users simpler. The first 2 are examples of where our infrastructure is enabling AI use cases for our customers. The last one is an example of where we are using clustering to make it simple for our users to be able to group the assets that CyberVision, which is one of our products, helps them discover, to auto-group those assets in order to build segmentation. Like a lot of these networks are super flat. Segmentation is a challenge, and we help them do that, and I'll dig into that. Okay. Any kind of questions before I dive in? Good setup. You kind of understand like where we are, what we're doing. I'll walk through switching. I'll give it to Andrea to cover wireless, and then I'll come back and close it out with security. Okay, and I'll give you if you've not been to the world of solutions, I'll give you a taste of what you can expect and make a plea for you to come there because it's definitely going to be worth your time. Okay, so there's a lot of use cases to cover, but we have very little time, so I wanted to take 2 use cases and kind of show you what the implication of these 2 use cases on the network. Vision systems and virtual PLC, right? If you look at each of these use cases independently, you miss the point as to how important the network is to make these use cases possible, because they have kind of conflicting requirements that kind of like make it difficult to deploy the two use cases when you deploy them in parallel, right? So let's dig into what this looks like. When it comes to vision systems, what we are seeing is the evolution of vision systems, of machine vision, towards a networked machine vision. So on the left-hand side is what a typical vision system looks like in manufacturing today. It's, if you're familiar with this field, they are rule-based, right? So there's a set of rules. You program these vision systems according to a set of parameters, and they're able to do things like find defects in the products as things are getting manufactured, as an example. The key thing to notice here is that they typically tend to be siloed. There's an IPC that's used that runs the program for the vision system, and the cameras may be PoE powered or maybe not, right? Sometimes you power them with IRIG-B. But the key point is they're like this isolated, siloed systems programmed one at a time. They do a good job, but it's cumbersome because you got to kind of like tackle each use case by itself. What's happening? All the camera vendors are moving towards what's happening on the right-hand side, which is they're now starting to use AI to be able to train the model based on what the vision system is seeing at that point in time, and then run inferencing on the edge to be able to detect a lot more complex things in terms of being able to detect defects and so on. And there's several use cases that they enable. But the point here is that now what's happening is the cameras are PoE powered. That's kind of like table stakes. But there's a lot of data being sent up into like the level 3 of the Podium model, or into the factory server room, where the models are getting trained or the images are getting stored for defect tracking in the future, and so on and so forth. And so it's really driving up bandwidth on the network. Like, this is like a big trend. We've gone from fast Ethernet to like 10 gig uplinks all of a sudden, and it's happened in a matter of like 2 years, right? This is a big shift that we're seeing in the industry. The second thing is the emergence of the virtual PLC. This is the use case where we are actually decoupling control from a PLC and putting it on general purpose compute for the purpose of driving efficiency and automation. So the automation vendors are focusing on how to enable deploying software, deploying PLC programs, and maintaining these PLC programs on the plant floor, just like how IT deploys software in the enterprise, right? Like, that's where the industry is shifting. And so we have two kind of like ways in which this is playing out. The PLC is getting detached from dedicated hardware. In the first case, it's going up and getting centralized on servers in the data center. If you're not familiar with the use case, there's a big announcement that Audi made with Cisco and Siemens, where they actually took their controllers, virtualized it in the data center, and it was the first time it was ever done. It was like kind of like groundbreaking in terms of what they did, and we helped them enable this use case. The key point here is that the control traffic, which is super sensitive to jitter, is now sharing the entire factory network. On the right-hand side is what we like to call as automation in a box, where the virtual PLC is running on ruggedized PCs on the floor, but it's sharing the CPU with other workloads, right? And now this PLC is sharing traffic with other applications on the network. And so all of a sudden what you have is deterministic latency that's required for these virtual PLCs that is competing with the video in the previous use case, right? So you have big jumbo frames of video traffic, and you've got super latency sensitive, jitter sensitive control traffic that all has to share the same link. So introducing the IE3500 switch that we just launched today at Cisco Live, what does it do to enable these use cases, right? I'm just picking a set of features that this particular switch, this industrial switch, does to support these use cases. First and foremost, we have really amped up the PoE budget on the switch, the number of PoE ports to support vision systems. So we have 2.5 gig downlinks to support some of these pan and tilt cameras. We have 90 watts of PoE. You can connect more PoE cameras to the system than we could in the existing shipping product. We've got things like fast PoE, perpetual PoE, all of these things to help provide resiliency to the camera, so that when the switch kind of, let's say, reboots when you're doing a software upgrade, the power still goes to the camera. Or let's say you are let's say you have some planned downtime and the switch reboots, the camera gets power before the switch even comes up, right? And then we've got 3 10 gig uplinks to enable these video use cases that I just spoke about. Now, on the flip side, to support this deterministic traffic, we've got frame preemption. Anybody's familiar with what frame preemption looks like? So if you think about typical QoS, right, you've got your priority queue, but even if your high priority traffic is on your high priority queue, if a low priority frame is already on the wire, you have no choice. Like you got to let 1,500 bytes get onto the wire, and then your high priority traffic can continue. What TSN frame preemption does is you've got this notion of an express queue, and the express queue will preempt the low priority traffic. So let's say you've got 2 bytes of a 1,500 byte packet on the wire. It'll stop that frame, let the high priority traffic go, and then resume the low priority frame. And the other side reassembles it, right? And with that, we minimize the jitter for high priority control traffic, right? So we're able to support these two kind of like use cases together. There's a lot of synchronization that takes place with robotics and so on and so forth in the environment, and we support PTP with boundary clock, transparent clock, and grandmaster clock, so that these robots and drives can be synchronized with these cameras as all of these things are moving. So just one example of what this technology is. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to Andrea, and we'll get to wireless and then come back to security.
So echoing what Ruben was saying, there's different use cases where we see wireless as a key enabler. We go from manufacturing, where you can see automated guided vehicles that require reliable wireless communication, and then we see trends in heavy industries where they're moving personnel from the field and they operate their machines from an office. Or all the modern subway systems are built, or light rail systems are built without a conductor, so they're driverless trains, and so they require reliable communication system to actually safely move them. Or wireless is a key enabler in places where it's really hard or impossible to bring copper and fiber. And just going into one example, we see a manufacturing assembly line going from conveyor belts to the free-moving AGV system, so that they can reconfigure the assembly lines in a much faster way. And clearly, to go from one paradigm to the other, requires a shift in technology as well. And so, just looking at one example here, we have a factory floor. You have your Wi-Fi 7 access point hanging on the wall, and you provide connectivity to personnel and assets. Everything works. Everybody's happy. But what if the environment changes? Now you have industrial shelving there. You have more robots, more assets, and now your signal doesn't go everywhere. You have drops and communication drops happen, and your operation halt. And so the easy fix for that is really over provisioning the network. And so you start deploying more access point everywhere, so your network goes everywhere. You have a pervasive Wi-Fi umbrella. But your personnel might be happy, some assets might be happy, but then you still have some of the assets that need to move from one place to the other on your factory floor. And Wi-Fi, even the latest standard, doesn't play well with fast roaming. And so you might end up in communication fault. And so to solve these use cases, Cisco has a technology called ultra-reliable wireless backhaul, and that really address two topologies. One is extending communication in places where it's hard to bring fiber and copper, and you extend the entire core network, on a traffic light where you need to connect, sensors or cameras, or on the other side, the mobility topology where you are assets that are actually moving in an environment and they need a seamless connectivity, seamless roaming between one access point and the other to enable industrial automation systems. And it's really based on 3D pillars. Build an end-to-end overlay to support the data traffic and support the fast roaming. Make before break and off, meaning the client device that sits on the AGV, for example, negotiate the connection to the next access point before breaking the communication where it's connected. While Wi-Fi, it's really a break before make, type of roaming. And we have also a technology called multi-path operation that lets you protect the specific traffic, for example, the PLC for automation systems, traffic over the wireless network, duplicating those packets over two uncorrelated channels. So you have if one channel gets interfered or you're moving and you don't have that connection with that access point anymore available, you still have the secondary path that can still send the information across the network. And what we're announcing, as Cisco Live now, it's really integrating these two technologies together with one single management platform, one single wireless infrastructure. And so you can get the best of Wi-Fi performance for your IT use cases, and you can combine them or stretch your platform over and cover all the different OT use cases where you have to connect assets that require ultra reliability. And so what you have, until yesterday, what our customer needed to deploy is a dedicated IT network, for their, laptop computers and personnel. And then they needed to invest in several different dedicated industrial technologies to cover the OT use cases. Now, instead of using the same platform, same technology, from the same controller, they can actually deploy all their access points and decide which radio slot, will be dedicated to, Wi-Fi, or which one will be dedicated to the ultra reliable wireless use cases and connecting, moving assets or extending that connection over in places where it's hard to bring network drops. We're targeting a list of SKUs, so we're clearly adding this functionality in the Wi-Fi 7 access points. We're targeting, the Wi-Fi 6E and all the industrial portfolio, and then we're backporting that on Wi-Fi 6 as well, because all the customers that are already invested in Cisco access point, and now they can go into the WLC and enable this functionality and deploy that in their systems. When we tested, in the technology out in the field, this is one of the major automotive manufacturer that deployed our technology to, control their AGVs. You see the delta between, a Wi-Fi 6 device, that, clearly delivers a very good performance, but you have a completely different, situation where you deliver the ultra reliable wireless backhaul. You have a sub 10 milliseconds, latency. You have close to zero packet loss, on the network, and that is the enabler for pushing industrial automation systems. So just to wrap up, with this integration of the two technologies, you can run both at the same time or off the same access point through a unified image, and that eliminates the need of deploying separate different networks. There is a single unified management that can allow you to operate both, and so it positions Cisco in a very unique way that can deliver Wi-Fi and wireless connectivity indoor, outdoor, and all the way to the most challenging industrial use cases. Ruben, if you want to come back and go over.
Thank you, Andrea. Okay, so I introduced you to the IE3500, right? So, but we're not just launching just one switch. We're launching an entire portfolio. Like I said, we're introducing 19 new SKUs into the portfolio. So we've got 6 SKUs of the 3500. We've got the same SKU in the IP67 form factor, where you can literally put them in food and bev or manufacturing and essentially wash down the switch. As an example, we have it in the compact form factor. And then we have the IE3100 offering 4 PPPoE. So, imagine an enterprise use case where you've got this particular switch, and then you are deploying it outdoor to connect access points or to connect cameras for video surveillance, right? And all of this, the switches starting with the 3500, eventually will make it down its portfolio, will be managed by the Meraki dashboard. So you'll have one unified management plane for the entire kind of product line. And the last switch that we're launching is the rack mount switch with both copper and fiber ports. With that, I know we're running towards the short of time, but I just kind of wanted to show you one thing. So this year we have probably the most spectacular setup we've set up in the world of solutions in terms of display. So everything that Andrea and I shared with you, you can see in display in each of these use cases. So this is exactly what's happening on the world of solutions today, right now. And this particular demo, which is a factory demo, is really, really impressive where you can see machine vision and virtual PLCs in action. It's a super big demo. You can see guitars moving, and you can see robots tuning the guitar. So please make the time to come to the World of Solutions if you can. And if you do show up and you reach out to us, we'll organize a special tour for you. Maybe if you want to take some videos and put it on social media, we'll be happy to walk you through the setup and kind of like give you a quick preview of what this looks like.